She stood there in her white dress, tears streaming down her face, as the man she was about to marry stared at her like she was a stranger. The church had gone silent, except for one voice, a man no one recognized, shouting from the back of the room. "Tell him the truth, Emily! Tell him who you really are!" The bouquet slipped from her hands and hit the floor. Gasps echoed through the pews. Someone screamed. Within minutes, police sirens wailed outside. Everyone thought it was the happiest day of her life. But when that stranger walked into the church, everything she had been hiding came crashing down. By the end of this story, someone would end up in handcuffs, and it wouldn't be who you think. This is the true story of Emily Carter, a woman who lived two lives, and the wedding day that exposed it all. Emily Carter was 28 years old, beautiful, soft-spoken, and according to everyone who knew her, kind. Daniel Price, her groom, was 36, a successful real estate developer who had fallen deeply in love with her the moment they met. They seemed perfect together. But Jake Harris, the man who interrupted their wedding, was someone no one at that ceremony had ever seen before. So who was he? Why did he crash Emily's wedding? And what was Emily hiding that could destroy her life in front of 200 guests? As detectives would later discover, this story wasn't about love. It was about lies, betrayal, and revenge. And the truth was far more twisted than anyone could have imagined. Before we go deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button, like and share, so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Emily Carter grew up in a small town in Virginia, raised by her grandmother after her mother died when she was just 11 years old. She learned early on that life could be cruel, that stability was rare, and that love, real love, was something she had always been searching for. She worked her way through community college, got a job as a receptionist at a medical clinic, and kept mostly to herself. Friends described her as quiet, thoughtful, maybe a little guarded. She didn't talk much about her past. Daniel Price, on the other hand, came from money. His father owned a construction company, and Daniel had turned that into a real estate empire by the time he was 30. He was charming, generous, the kind of man who remembered your birthday and sent flowers just because. They met at a charity gala in Richmond. Emily had been invited by a co-worker. Daniel noticed her standing alone by the bar, nursing a glass of wine, looking like she didn't quite belong. He walked over, introduced himself, and they talked for 3 hours. He said later that he knew that night. He knew she was the one. They dated for a year and a half. Daniel proposed on a beach in the Outer Banks at sunset. Emily cried, said yes, and posted the photos on social media. Everyone congratulated them. His family loved her. Her friends were thrilled. The wedding was planned for June. A small ceremony at a historic church in Richmond, followed by a reception at a country club. Everything seemed perfect. But in the months leading up to the wedding, a few people started noticing things. Emily would disappear for hours without explanation. She would get phone calls and step outside to take them, her voice low, her face tense. When Daniel asked where she had been, she would say she was visiting her mother's grave, or running errands, or meeting an old friend. Daniel didn't push. He trusted her. But one of Emily's bridesmaids, a woman named Rachel who had known her since high school, mentioned something strange to another friend. She said Emily had told her she was going to visit her mother one weekend. But Rachel knew Emily's mother had been dead for 5 years. She didn't say anything to Daniel. She figured maybe Emily was confused, or maybe she meant something else, but it stuck with her. And then, just 2 days before the ceremony, someone sent Daniel a message that would change everything. The message came from an unknown number. It was short. "Ask Emily who Jake is." Daniel stared at his phone, confused. He showed it to his brother, who was his best man. His brother said it was probably a prank, maybe someone jealous or trying to stir up trouble before the wedding. Daniel agreed. He didn't bring it up with Emily. He didn't want to upset her. But the message stayed in his mind. The wedding day arrived. It was a Saturday in early June, warm and sunny. The church was filled with white roses and candles. Emily's grandmother sat in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Daniel's parents were there, smiling, proud. The music started. Emily walked down the aisle in a long lace gown, holding a bouquet of peonies. Daniel watched her, his heart pounding, tears in his eyes. She looked beautiful. She looked happy, the officiant began. They exchanged their vows. Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger. And then, just as the officiant was about to pronounce them husband and wife, the doors at the back of the church flew open. A man walked in. He was tall, thin, maybe 30 years old, wearing jeans and a wrinkled button-down shirt. His face was red, his eyes wild. He walked straight down the aisle, not stopping, not looking at anyone but Emily. "Emily!" he shouted. "Emily, look at me!" The music stopped. Everyone turned. Daniel froze. Emily's face went white. "You promised me," the man yelled. "You said you loved me. You said the wedding was off." Gasps echoed through the church. Daniel turned to Emily, his voice shaking. "Who is that?" Emily couldn't speak. She just stood there, trembling, tears streaming down her face. The man, Jake, pulled out his phone and held it up. "I have the texts, Emily. I have everything. You told me we were going to be together." Daniel's mother stood up. Someone shouted for security. But Jake wasn't done. He pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket and threw it at Emily's feet. "You're pregnant, aren't you? Is it mine or his?" The church erupted. People were shouting, crying, standing up. Daniel staggered back, his face twisted in shock and pain. Emily collapsed to her knees, sobbing, her hands covering her face. Security finally arrived and grabbed Jake, dragging him toward the exit. He fought them, screaming, "Tell him the truth! Emily, tell him!" And then, just as they pulled him out the door, Emily whispered something that no one heard except Daniel. "I'm sorry." Moments later, someone dialed 911, but not for Jake. Before we go deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button, like and share so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The police arrived within 10 minutes. By then, the church had emptied. Guests stood outside in clusters, whispering, some crying, some recording videos on their phones. Daniel sat alone in a pew, his head in his hands. His brother sat beside him, not saying anything. Emily was in a back room with her grandmother and one of the bridesmaids. She was still in her wedding dress, mascara streaked down her face, shaking. The officers spoke to Jake first. He had calmed down by then, sitting on the curb outside, his hands on his knees. He told them his name was Jake Harris. He was 31 years old, worked in IT in Washington, D.C. He said he had been dating Emily for 2 years. He said she had told him she loved him. He said she had promised to call off the wedding. He showed them text messages, hundreds of them, going back over 2 years. Messages where Emily called him baby, told him she missed him, sent him photos. Messages where she said she was only marrying Daniel for his money, that she didn't love him, that she would leave him after the wedding. The officers looked at each other. One of them went inside to talk to Emily. Daniel refused to press charges. He said he just wanted to go home. He walked out of the church without looking back. His family followed. The wedding was over. The media picked up the story within hours. "The double-life bride," one headline read. "Woman exposed at altar for secret affair," said another. Emily's name was everywhere. Her photo was shared thousands of times. People who didn't even know her were commenting, calling her a liar, a manipulator, worse. But the detectives working the case, 2 officers from the Richmond Police Department, knew there was more to this. They started digging. They found out that Emily had been engaged once before, 3 years earlier, to a man named Marcus Shaw. Marcus had disappeared 2 weeks before their wedding. No one knew where he went. His family filed a missing person report, but the case went cold. Detectives found financial records showing that Emily had transferred over $15,000 to Jake over the past year. Jake claimed it was loans, money she promised to pay back, but Emily's bank account showed she had also received large deposits from Daniel during the same time. They found something else. A storage unit rented under Emily's name in a facility outside Richmond. When they opened it, they found 4 wedding dresses, all different styles, all unworn, still in garment bags. They found boxes of wedding gifts, unopened, from different registries. They found cards addressed to Emily from men they didn't recognize. And then, at the bottom of one box, they found something that made them call for backup. A small black camera hidden inside a jewelry box, and dozens of SD cards. The detectives took the SD cards back to the station and began watching the footage. What they found was chilling. The videos showed Emily in different apartments, different homes, meeting with a woman they didn't recognize. The woman was older, maybe in her mid-30s, blonde, well-dressed. In one video, the woman was coaching Emily. "You have to make him believe you're in love with him. It's not enough to just say it. You have to cry. You have to be vulnerable." In another video, Emily was sitting on a couch, her head in her hands, and the woman was pacing. "You're getting too close to this one, Emily. You said you could handle it. If you can't, we're done." The detectives ran facial recognition on the woman. Her name was Laura Mitchell. And she wasn't just anyone. She was Emily's older sister. Laura had a criminal record: fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit wire fraud. She had served 18 months in federal prison 5 years earlier. The detectives brought Emily in for questioning. She sat across from them in a small grey room, still wearing the same clothes from the day before. Her eyes red and swollen. At first, she refused to talk. But when they showed her the videos, she broke. She told them everything. Laura had come up with the plan years ago, after their mother died and left them with nothing but debt. Laura said they could make money, real money, by targeting wealthy men. Emily would meet them, date them, get engaged. They would plan the wedding, accept gifts, open joint bank accounts. And then, right before the wedding, Emily would disappear. Laura would help her move, change her name, start over somewhere else. The men were usually too embarrassed to report it. And even if they did, there was no crime. Engagements weren't legally binding. They had done it 3 times before Daniel. Marcus Shaw, the missing fiancé, hadn't disappeared. He had been scammed. Emily had taken $50,000 from him and vanished. He never filed charges. He just wanted to move on. But with Daniel, something changed. Emily said she fell in love with him. She didn't want to go through with it anymore. She told Laura she wanted out. Laura threatened her. She said if Emily didn't finish the job, she would go to the police and tell them Emily had been the one running the scams, that Laura had nothing to do with it. Emily panicked. She kept dating Jake on the side because Laura told her to, as a backup plan in case Daniel figured it out. But Jake fell in love with her too. And when Emily tried to break it off, he snapped. He showed up at the wedding to expose her, to ruin her, because if he couldn't have her, no one could. The detectives arrested Laura the next day. She was charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, and extortion. Emily was charged as an accomplice. She turned herself in. The media exploded. The story went national. People couldn't believe it. Some felt sorry for Emily. Others said she got what she deserved. Daniel gave one interview to a local news station. He said he didn't know what to believe anymore. He said he loved her, or at least he thought he did. He said he didn't think he would ever trust anyone again. But just when it seemed justice was served, one final twist changed everything. 6 months later, Emily was awaiting trial. She had been released on bail, staying with her grandmother, wearing an ankle monitor, not allowed to leave the county. She had lost her job. She had no friends left. Her social media accounts had been deleted. She spent most of her days in her room, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in her mind. One afternoon, a letter arrived. It was addressed to her, handwritten, no return address. She opened it carefully. It was from Daniel. The letter was 2 pages long. He said he had been thinking about her every day since the wedding. He said he didn't understand why she did what she did, but he believed her when she said she loved him. He said he forgave her. He said he hoped she could forgive herself. Emily cried as she read it. She read it 3 times. She folded it carefully and put it in a drawer beside her bed. She thought maybe, just maybe, there was still something good left in the world. But what Emily didn't know was that at that exact moment, across town, Daniel was sitting in his lawyer's office, signing papers. On the desk in front of him was a wedding invitation. Cream-colored cardstock, gold lettering. The bride's name was Laura Harris. Laura Mitchell had changed her last name after her release from prison. She had reached out to Daniel 2 months earlier, claiming she wanted to apologize for what her sister had done. They met for coffee, then dinner, then again. Daniel said later that Laura understood him in a way no one else did. She had been a victim too, he said. She had been manipulated by Emily just like he had. The wedding was planned for November. Small, private, just close family. No one from Emily's side was invited. When Emily found out, 3 weeks before the ceremony, she called Daniel. He didn't answer. She called again. Nothing. She sent him a letter. It came back unopened. She tried to warn him. She told her lawyer, who told the police, who said there was nothing they could do. Laura hadn't been convicted of anything related to Daniel. She was a free woman. The wedding happened. Daniel and Laura were married in a courthouse ceremony. No church, no guests, just a judge and a witness. Afterward, they went to dinner. Laura smiled, kissed him, told him she loved him. Daniel smiled back. But as they walked to the car, Laura pulled out her phone and sent a text. "It's done." The reply came instantly. "Good. I'll wire the money tomorrow." The number wasn't saved, but if anyone had traced it, they would have found it belonged to a man named Marcus Shaw. The same Marcus Shaw who had been engaged to Emily years earlier. The same Marcus Shaw who had supposedly vanished. He hadn't vanished. He had been planning. And Laura had been helping him the entire time. In the end, no one really knew who was conning who. Was it love, or just another perfect lie? So let me ask you this. What would you have done if you were Daniel? Would you have forgiven Emily? Would you have walked away? Or would you have done exactly what he did? Think about it. Think about how easy it is to believe someone when they look you in the eye and tell you they love you. Think about how much we trust people, how much we give them, how much we risk. Emily thought she was the victim. Daniel thought he was. Laura thought she was smarter than everyone. And maybe she was. But here's the thing. Every single person in this story made a choice. Emily chose to lie. Daniel chose to trust. Laura chose to manipulate. Jake chose revenge. And all of those choices led to that moment in the church when everything came crashing down. So what do you think really happened that day? Do you think Emily ever really loved Daniel? Do you think Laura actually cared about anyone but herself? Do you think Daniel knew, deep down, that something was wrong? Let me know in the comments. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you've ever been lied to like this. Tell me if you've ever been the one doing the lying. Your comment might be featured in our next story. And if you thought this was unbelievable, wait until you hear about the husband who married his wife's twin without knowing, and the secret that destroyed 3 families. Subscribe now so you don't miss it. Thank you for watching. And remember, the truth is always stranger than fiction.